In this video, we're going to go over the watch list for the week of March 29th, 2021. Before I get into the watch list, if you're not in the room, you can find the link in the description of the video and in the bio section of social media. This is going to be a short week. Friday, we have off for Good Friday. So it'll be 4 days of trading this week. On the docket, we don't really have anything substantial this week, except for we have OPEC on Thursday. Friday, we have off, like I said, for a Good Friday. But even though Friday's off, there is going to be non-farm and unemployment rates coming out on Friday, regardless of it being closed. So just be aware of that for over the weekend swings if you do anything over the weekend and stuff like that. But like I said, the volume could be light because of the short week. Now, the thing I think is kind of interesting on this week going into tomorrow is that we have the CPCE, which is the put to call ratio and the equities, and I reference to this a lot because it's a nice little edge to give you to understand what could possibly happen the next couple days. And the thing that I think is interesting is that even though this past Friday we had a major squeeze in the close, and it was a big update and it closed near all-time highs, there's still a ton of puts going at all-time highs right here. I mean, you would think that with the squeeze Friday and the Friday's action that a lot of these they'd be more call buyers than there are actually but puts didn't get squeezed out. They're holding long and strong. Based on this, I would not be surprised if we end up squeezing this week because of that. Now, as you can see right here on February 26th, which is February 26th, right here is where the puts were high, and this is where it popped right here and squeezed them out. Now, as you can see, this little pop right here, it took the puts from an extreme high to an extreme low, just in this little area right here. And in fact, that we'll look at this one right here. This is March 5th, which is right here, going right there. That's where it squeezed up. As you can see, puts are at a extreme level high. So it just that's how you can usually tell when the market's going to flip on you, is I pay close attention to this regardless of what the action is happening, because this gives you an advance notice of what's potentially going to happen before it happens. I know a lot of people don't look at it. You should learn this. So based on this, the fact that we had the squeeze on Thursday and Friday, the reversal right here on SPY, and the puts are still very, very high above the 58, the 0.58 area, that it kind of makes me think that we're going to squeeze possibly a 400. Now, I'm sure everyone and their mother is going to jump in puts at 400 because it's a big fat round number, and it could, in fact, have a little bit of a problem, a little resistance at 400, but the market likes to overshoot. So if it does gap up and the market does make it to 400, it's probably going to stall out a little bit, get people loaded in on puts, then it's probably going to squeeze to 402 or something like that. The market loves to overshoot and trap people, so anticipate that. Normally, I would think we're going to go with puts, but because of the put to call ratio, I think it's going to end up squeezing to 400 plus. So we'll have to see how it gaps up the futures, and if the futures end up gapping up over 400, then we'll probably end up seeing a sell-off tomorrow. But I'm not quite sure how much we're going to gap up. Then we had the boat that's stuck in the canal, and that's going to end up causing some issues too in the market. So we'll have to see what happens with that and how the market reacts to it. So if the market does gap up over 400, then gets to like 401 or 402, then I would think that then maybe the puts will actually work then. But As far as at exactly 400, I don't think I think it's going to overshoot and squeeze and trap all those all those puts are going to jump in at 400. So, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now, because there's too many puts on one side based on this chart right here, and I don't think that it's gonna be a good play to play puts right now. We'll have to see how it gaps up and how Monday plays out. So always pay attention to this. Now this only updates overnight. You can't like see it in real time like a normal chart. You have to check it, like 5 or 6, a couple hours after close it will update, and then you can set a game plan overnight for what's going to happen. So that's my thoughts on SPY. I know that it looks like you be a good area to short because it's in a ton of resistance right here, but based on the put to call ratio, I don't think it's a good idea. But have to see what happens. Now I have a few on the bearish side. Now one of them is Home Depot. Home Depot has just gone too far, too fast. I mean, it was down here at 245 back a couple weeks ago, and had so many huge green days, and it's on the RSI is it's almost near 80 on the daily. Now it broke out on the this channel right here, this bullish channel on the weekly and daily. I'm expecting this to come back and retest this area. I'm not saying it will. I mean, I think it's quite possible, because usually what happens when there's a big breakout, they'll come back and retest the area. So I would watch it under 300 for a push to 390, 295, then the 292, 290, big area. Then you have this area right here, 285, then the 282 area, which is the trend line. So we'll have to see that. I think it needs to let some air out on that. So that's definitely one I'll be watching. URI, which is United Rentals. The RSI on the weekly is 80, and it's flattening out right here on the MACD, and it's diverging on the daily. So I think we could see a pullback on that. This is one of those runs like we've seen on Roku and Baidu and BA that I called before it actually reversed, because I could see it diverging and stuff like that. I think that URI could be the next one, and this is one I would definitely keep an eye on underneath, 320, then the 315, basically every $5. 310 area would be pretty big. Then we have 305, then 300. If it loses this 300, you get room down to 390 and 285 and 275. So 275 and this area right here, 260, 265-ish will be a pretty big area too. So we'll have to see how far it will drop, and if it will drop this week. Just because it's diverging does not mean it's gonna fall right away. I had Baidu and Roku like on my watch list for a pullback for like 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks. I think it was like 3 weeks before it actually pulled back. I just kept calling and calling and calling because I kept watching it diverge, and it can diverge for weeks and months before it does anything. I mean, if you look at SPY, I mean, this thing has been diverging for a while on the weekly. So I mean, back here, which is August 31st of 2020, it's still diverging. So just because it's diverging doesn't mean it's a top and to jump right in, and you have to wait for confirmation and stuff like that. Confirmation would be the breaking down below the 320 area, and it shows more weakness below 310. So definitely would watch for that. Now Target, there's another one. It's just been going tearing and tearing and tearing. Yeah, can it keep going? Yeah, it can absolutely keep going, but it just overshot 200. And got it diverging quite a bit on the RSI right here. You see practically double top, or just went slightly over. So we get a higher high, and RSI is going higher lows. I mean lower high. So get a divergence right there going on the RSI, and same with the on the weeklies and the histogram too. So definitely we'll be watching that for a pullback under let's say 199 for a push to 198. Then you get this area right here, 194. I'm just rounding to the next number. 193, then you get this area right here, 190, so it could pull back to 190. Now you also have to pay attention that anytime it gets too far away from the RCT trend line on the hourly, I mean, well, not all time frames, a lot of time frames. I look at the 10-minute, the hourly, but I'm looking for the weekly right now. It could pull back. As you can see right here, it started to get away and it came back down and retested it. It could do the same thing. Now the RCT trend line is pointing up, so the levels will change. It's doing that. Now I think URI was oh yeah, I mean, look how severely disconnected it is. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to go down to 200, but I definitely think it could go down to the 260s, 270s area if it does pull back. So those are only a couple I'm watching on the short side. Now, I just want to bring up Lululemon, LULU. It's got earnings on Tuesday after hours, and based on what we've been seeing a lot of earning beats and it just selling off. So I will probably sit out of LU until after earnings to see what happens. Hopefully it will do exactly that. It will either dump or it will have good earnings and pull back. And I would definitely love to get it if it does end up pulling back. Because Lululemon's just this time of year, it's going to start rebounding. So, but it could be that one of those ones where it actually did beat and it actually took off, but hopefully it won't because I'm not in it anymore. But I just didn't want to be in it because of what's been happening with earnings, where earnings gets good and it just dumps because of uncertainty or whatever, for whatever reason, or PE is too high or whatever reason it is. Different stocks have different reasons for dumping on good ER, like Splunk and stuff like that. So I'll be watching that on Wednesday morning after ER because earnings is after hours on Tuesday. Now on the bullish side, I have quite a few. Lilly is one of them, LLY. Now I'm looking at it right here. You get support right here at the 189 and it started to reverse on the daily. If it does manage to get over this 186 area right here, it's probably going to take off to 190 and test this 193 gap resistance right here. So it will probably likely struggle right here if it does manage to get to that. If it does enough strength behind it or news, it could definitely fill the gap. So LLY could be a nice reversal this week. Hopefully the options chain is not, the spread's not bad, or it's not too pricey and stuff like that. So another one to watch, which I'm not too fond of, is Visa. I mean, Visa just, when I traded it this week, it just couldn't seem, it was going up, but the premiums just weren't going up with it. So I doubt I'll trade it, but I'll definitely be watching it. If it does manage to get over Friday's high, which is we'll just say 214, it could push to 216, then you get the 217, 218 area, then you have 220, and 220 will be a pretty big area for it to break. So Visa could be one to watch. Now QCOM is another one. Now QCOM is starting to look pretty good. If it gets over this 135 area right here, it could definitely take off and push to 140, 145 really fast. 145, this whole area is a pretty big area for QCOM, and as you can see on the daily, it filled this gap right here. This needed to be filled, and it did that weeks ago, and it's just been chopping right here underneath the middle Keltner channel, which is the 20 EMA on the daily. So over 135, this thing's going to end up taking off to 140, 145. So I'd definitely be watching QCOM this week for a strong move. And the weekly looks good too. You know, it's stochastics is oversold on the weekly. I like seeing that on weeklies because they usually end up being a pretty good reversal coming up. So we'll definitely have to watch that. Netflix, whoops, typed in the wrong ticker. Netflix is just sitting in this channel again, week after week, week after week. It cannot get out of it. But it started to have a little momentum right here on Friday, and it did, catch the support at 500 and held it. So I'm thinking, if the market's strong and it does end up squeezing over 510, you get this area right here of, you get a lot of resistance right here in this 510 area. Then you get this this area right here of 520. Well, you could say 519, 518, and 520. Then you get this 525, 530. I mean, you could end up seeing it go back up into the 535, 540 area if it can get any momentum behind it. And why is my chart lagging? Okay, it's lagging. We'll have to pause the video for a second. Okay, I'm back. I don't know why I did that. That was kind of stupid, but yeah. Just taking a look back at LU. Now, going back to McDonald's. Now, McDonald's, you know, I was looking at this from a point of view that, you know, it could probably be topping out and could be a good short, but, you know, I'm looking at it on the weekly. You get this big inverted head and shoulders. I mean, if it does manage to get over this 226, 227 area, it could really pop and get to 230 and 232 and make an all-time high on McDonald's. It's just a huge inverted head and shoulders on the weekly, and we'd like to see if that could actually play out. And plus the weekly, it's the MACD is just crossing over. I mean, now I don't rely on indicators as much as I do other things. I rely on like them as support and resistance, but I don't go and buy something just because the MACD crosses over, because that's not the way I do things. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. So yeah, McDonald's over 227 could make a run to a new all-time high and could have a really monster run to 240 or something. So definitely have to keep an eye on McDonald's. We'll see what happens there. Now Apple, pretty much the same thing I said last week. I mean, it came back, it broke out here, it came back, and we tested this area of 118, and it's been holding the area. It's been bouncing here, bounced here, and I'm assuming it's going to bounce here if the market's strong. Now remember what I always say: if the market's strong, I go to the bullish list. If the market's weak, I go to the bearish list, because those will provide the best runs. So I'd be watching Apple over 122 for a push to 124. Then you get 126. Then you get the 127 area. Then 128. If it does manage to get over the 128, you get this 130 will be a big area right here, right there. You get the 131, 132, 133. Basically, any whole dollar on Apple it will react to, and then you get 137. Then you got 140. Now, I don't know if we'll make that kind of a run or not. If the market's really, really strong, I mean, it could, but it will be all dependent on what the market does this week. So, but if it does manage to break down this area, it could be a good short too underneath 118. We even say 119. It could come down and fill this to the bottom support of 10. You could say 113, 114. And down to 108. So I could definitely come back and retest this other major support right down here. We'll have to keep an eye on Apple. Apple could be one of those ones where you're just gonna have to flip your thesis based on what the market does, because it could go either way. I mean, if it does end up breaking this 118 area, it could be a pretty good drop for Apple. So that'd be definitely a good short play if that did end up happening. Now Baidu, I know there's a lot of drama with Baidu with margin call that happened and stuff like that, but I think that we'll have to see if it will actually reverse, but I definitely have it on watch to reverse. Now as you can see right here, it's bullish divergence. The histogram is making higher lows as the chart's making lower lows. But it did have a big run end of day on Friday because of the massive spike. We'll have to watch it over 210 for a push to like 220. Then you get this 225, 226 area, 230, then 240. Then you get a lot at 250. I can't imagine it'll get above 250. But Baidu's been one of those stocks where when it starts getting momentum, it can make a $20 run like it's nothing. I've seen it. I've been short when it's done that, and I think this is one of them right here. So it could have a major short squeeze this week. The only bad thing with Baidu is that if you trade options with it, the the options end up having nasty spreads and hard to trade, light volume. So I end up usually taking comments on that, so I don't have to deal with that stuff. But as you can see, the RSI is right around 34, which is very low. I probably was below 30 when it was down here into the 180 below. And Baidu just does not like to get that low on the RSI on the daily. So I mean, I did over here on the weekly, back over here, and I think that's when they were having issues with the search engine or something like that. I can't remember what that was, but yeah, that's too far back for me to remember. But anyways, definitely be watching Baidu for a push to 240, 250 this week. Now Shopify, same thing. Shop, thinking the same thing, and I held this area right here, the one, we'll say the 1030 area. I mean, it did, how low did this candle go? Let's go to 1000, went to 1005. I mean, it went to close. But if it does manage to get over this 1080 level, it's probably going to end up squeezing 1100, 1150, even possibly even 1200. Now if it does manage to get over this 1185, 1200 area, it's probably going to have a monster run. So it could run to the 1300s, 1280, 1300s on that. So you get 1230 right there. So yeah, 1200, 1230, 1280, 1300 be another next big psychological number. Then you have this gap fill right here. So Spotify, diverging on the histogram and the RSI, it's making lower lows. It can definitely take off this week, so definitely watch that one too. Roku is another one. Roku is just getting hammered on since I've been calling it back here, and the RSI close to 30. Back here it was at 30 and it popped a little bit, so I'm expecting the same thing to happen. It's diverging, as you can see. It's making lower lows. Histogram is making lower highs, so it is diverging on the histogram. Histogram is one of my favorite ones to see a divergence, because I mean RSI is too, but I like the histogram better. It's more defined. So I would watch it over the 310 for a push to 320, then you'll get a push to 340. Then 350 would be a big area, and 360 would be a big area. So it will run into a lot of problems, 340 to 360, because it's been sitting in that channel 360 to 340 for at least a week and a half right in here. So it'll probably likely come back up and retest this 340 area. Now what it does from the 340 area, we'll have to see. It could just retest it and go lower, or it could just end up going up to 360, then finally breaking out. Now remember, Roku used to be 486, but it did have I think an offering. I think that this was the offering right here or something. I don't quite remember, but yeah, it did have some kind of like offering. But the Roku's float was so tiny anyway, so the offering just really not much of anything. It'll probably end up likely getting back to 450, 500 sometime in the next year or so. But yeah, that is it for the watch list. There's a lot on the bullish side, like I said, quite a few, and there's only a few on the bearish side. Now everything will be determined on what SPY does, like I keep saying over and over and over. If you want to know what's going to happen, you need to be in the Discord room, because my thesis will change based on the gap ups overnight, because sometimes the gap ups on SPY are just so much that it just changes everything and changes my stance on things. And the best way to know what I plan on doing is to actually be in the room, because the gap up and the gap downs does actually change a lot, and obviously the news. So that's going to do it for the watch list. Make sure you like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.